Your deck of cards. Be sure and get those. If you don't have them, we have a limited quantity in there left, so be sure and get those because you will need them for your class, okay? So just be sure and do that. They want me to remind everybody. The class will be in the Salon F. It's over in that, it's just right next door here, this row of rooms over here. So probably the first one, and I'm not sure how far it'll extend. It depends on the size of the class, so. But that's where it'll be, just right here in this area. Okay, any other questions on that? Starts at 10 o'clock. Okay, all right. Are you ready? That was all I wanted to say, and usually, the last time I tried to introduce her, I started crying, so she's probably really nervous about me doing this. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you understand and that may have been part of my beginning, whatever, some of my first steps, but this is an interesting relationship. Would you agree? And I've had it said to me before, how did you get so lucky to have her as your mother? And they said, and remember, luck had nothing to do with it. I picked her, right? So, obviously, and it's becoming more and more obvious all the time, the design, the grand design that's here. And we came to work together and to do this work together. She was the trailblazer. She's the one that started it, and then she needed support and help. And so that's when I came into the picture. And all of us in the family did. And we have our varying roles, and we have a wonderful, wonderful group that does this. And I guess this is the time to say that. I know they can't hear us in there, but she said I run the company, but you need to know I have the most wonderful team that I work with that makes all of this happen. I don't do it by myself.
We can't do it without them.
I cannot do it without them. No, there is a huge, wonderful group that makes this happen. And so anybody you see, and Darren and Carol are part of this too, but at the Ozark table and everything, please thank them as well, because they make this happen, and our staff, our volunteers out at the registration desk and varying places that we have them, they are vital, vital people that are making this happen. And you guys with Swank, can I eat a little bit of crow? Chris, I apologize. I really didn't want to let go, and because we had that other group for so long, and I did not want to let go and trust you. But thank you, universe, for making me do that. You have done a fantastic job. Okay, like I said, I picked her. And we've got big things to do. Ooh, and I'm feeling it right now. I am extremely proud of her, and that's the part that I usually cry. She is my mother. We have mother-daughter issues. That's mother-daughter. She may be the fantastic master that she is, but she's still my mother, okay? And I'm still her daughter. It's just that way.
You're together 24/7. You know what that's like.
Right. But I love her immensely, and I'm so very, very proud of her and what she has accomplished and what she continues to accomplish and where she is continuing to go and the impact that she is having on the world and everything that is happening. And that's, and she has no idea. That's the beauty of this. She doesn't realize just what she's doing. So that is why it's my honor to be in this place with you. And I would like to turn it over, before I do start crying, to my mother, Dolores Cannon.
That's rare. It's very hard, very unusual you have your kids say anything good about you. Okay. But everything is growing and growing. Our company is growing by leaps and bounds, and we are getting better authors all the time, and we're spreading. And it's amazing what the company is doing. And also, we're continuing to travel all over the world. After this conference, I've been telling different people, I probably won't really be home until Thanksgiving. That's how much we're going to be on the road. Starting about a week from now, we'll do a nationwide tour and going up into Canada. Those of you who are in the Boston area, well, first we're going to be in Virginia, around Washington, D.C., doing a lecture there. If any of you are from these parts of the country and you want to come to these, and then we'll be going up in the Boston area with a lecture and my class. And Dee Wallace is going to be joining me on some of these in case you want to see her again too. We'll be the Boston area, then we go up into Canada, then across to Portland. And every place we're going to have a class. And then from Portland, we go down to Palm Springs, California, and then to Sedona. And we'll be back home then about the end of July. The whole month of July we'll be doing the United States. Then we have about a week or so, and we start out for a tour of Europe. And that's going to be 6 weeks. And they keep adding more and more countries on that. So it's going to be all over Europe. And then at the last minute, once I had the tickets bought, a last-minute thing come in, and I'm only going to be home from Europe 2 days. I have to turn around and go to India. It's a massive, huge conference. It's very, very important conference in India. It's a meeting of the spiritual scientists. And they said it is a big conference, and I'm going to be the keynote there, so it's that I got to do that. Even though I'm only going to have 2 days, that's hardly enough time to get over the jet lag from Europe before I turn around and go to India. Then I'm only going to have a week getting back from India, and we go to Singapore and then all over Australia. And we're not going to go to New Zealand this year because our friends are in Christchurch that put it together, and they had that massive earthquake that has destroyed Christchurch. So we said, we're not going to do that to you. So I'm skipping New Zealand. But we will be back home then Thanksgiving, and then that's the only time of the year I'm really home. Those holidays. And they were saying, why don't you come somewhere in January? I said, don't take my January away from me. I've got to have some downtime. So this is the way it's getting. It's constantly on the road. And we're booking already into 2012. More countries, more traveling. So it's reaching so many people. But this is what you do. You have to do this and get the word out. And they take care of me, and so they know it wouldn't put too much on my plate. But anyway, and I'm still writing more books, too. I write at night. So in addition to everything else I do, people don't have a clue what I do. They keep saying, what are you on anyway? My daughter calls me the ever-ready bunny, you know. But anyway, when you find what you're really supposed to be doing and you're on your path, everything goes smoothly and you're taken care of. And she said, we are reaching more people than we realize. Especially now we got the streaming going on. We're all over the world right now. That's amazing with the computer generation and the way the computer technology is set up. Okay, now I imagine everybody here knows me and knows what I do. I hope so, because I don't want to go into too much detail about my background. I want to get right to the chase of what this talks about. But I'm not a psychic. I do not channel. All of my 16 books have come from my experience in my work. I'm a hypnotherapist. I consider myself to be the investigator, the reporter, the researcher of lost knowledge, because everything that I've gotten has come through the people that I work with in my sessions. I have to put it together as a reporter. I do the research, organize it, and that's where the books come from. So it doesn't come from me, but it comes through all of the thousands and thousands of people that I work with. But I've been doing this now for over 40 years. And when I started out in the 60s, there was no New Age, there was no reincarnation. I mean, people didn't know these things. There was, but nobody knew about these things. They didn't know about reincarnation. They definitely didn't know about past lives. There were no metaphysics. There were no New Age stores. Some of the young people may have a hard time believing that, but there was a time when we weren't into any of that. So it was total ignorance, and that's when I got into it by accident. I was doing hypnosis over 40 years ago, and that's when it was only used for habits. Stop smoking, lose weight. That's how long ago I started. And stumbled into reincarnation by accident, if anything is ever an accident. If you read my books, 5 Lives Remembered, it tells the story of my beginning. And it's only taken 40 years for that book to come out. It was way, way ahead of its time. I tried for many, many years back then to get it published, and they said, "What are you talking about, past lives? We don't even know what you mean." So there were no stores, nothing, and I had all these rejects for so many years. I just said, "Oh, the heck with it, I'm moving on." And I began to write more books, because in the 70s is when I started doing the past life therapy full time. And even then it was not popular, nobody really knew about it. And I began to get information, and so I wrote books at that time. By the time the computers came along, I had 5 books that I'd written on the typewriter. But it took me 9 years to find my first publisher, because nobody knew anything about this, they didn't understand it. So my daughter says, the world is finally catching up with me, I guess, because I was doing it that long ago. But in the beginning, a lot of my work was history. That's the Jesus and the Essenes and those books, because that was all I was doing, was the past life regressions. But then along there somewhere, things began to change. And at first it was very subtle, but then I began to see I was having contact with a great and powerful force. And I didn't understand it in the beginning. But now, as this has developed over the last 30 years, I found a way to use this and to call it in, and now I use it in all of my sessions, and this is what I teach in my classes. We are communicating now with the greatest force there is, the source of all knowledge. You can't get any higher than that. That's what I use in my work, and they're the ones that give me the information that I write about, the source of all knowledge. This is also the part that does the instantaneous healings in my sessions. I don't heal, I don't do any of that. I am the facilitator, and they're the ones that do the work. And I just know how to talk to them, direct them through the client, and we get miracles every day in my office. So once I found out that, my main work now is therapy and counseling. And people are coming from all over the world to this little bitty town in Arkansas, here where I live. I said, it's my retreat. When I come back home, I can get up there and be isolated and recharge my batteries. Because nobody knows what I do over there, and nobody cares. So I can live in 2 worlds and have a balance. Otherwise, you can get into this kind of a world and go over the deep end very, very easily. I have to have that balance in order to survive. But it began to be more and more common as my books began to come out. People were seeking me out. But I work in the deepest possible level of trance. I work in the somnambulistic level. At that level, you get the conscious mind out of the picture. It cannot interfere. In the lighter levels, which a lot of hypnotists work at when they do past life regressions, the person remembers a lot of it. And they'll say, oh, I made the whole thing up. But you get the conscious mind out of the picture and focus on just let the subconscious come in and tell the story. You get the truth. And this is where all the information comes from. And I found a way that is a totally new technique that I'm teaching, is how to get the conscious mind out of the way and get to them. Now, the part that I work with, I call it the subconscious. but it's not the subconscious the way it's defined by the psychiatrist. That's a childish part of your mind. That's the part of your mind that is used for habits. That's not the part I work with. I didn't know what to call it when they first began to come through. When I finally said, well, I'm going to call you the subconscious. They said, we don't care what you call us. We don't have a name anyway, but we'll work with you. So the part that I call the subconscious, you may say it's the higher self, the oversoul, the higher consciousness, has all knowledge. It is extreme power, but yet it is full of total love. It's a great honor to work with them because the love I feel when I'm working with a client and the love that is in that office, the energy is so high. But they know everything about everybody. They're so big and so powerful, but yet they care about every single person. That's why we're able to have such wonderful results, because they know everything about you. There are no secrets. So when somebody comes to see me, they know what they're looking for. They see the bigger picture. All I have to do is ask the questions, and I know how to bring them in through the person I'm working with. And the results are tremendous. But the amazing thing as a reporter is the similarity of the information that comes through. Now, I work with thousands and thousands of people. So when the information comes in, if they're all saying the same thing, not knowing each other, not even knowing what I have found, we know it's got validity. And I know it's coming from them because they always speak the same way. They always have the same terminology. People read my books and they say, it sounds like the same person is answering all your questions. And I said, well, it is, really, it's them. But it's gotten to the point where I can have a session, say in England. They never interrupt the therapy part and when I'm working with a client. But toward the end, sometimes they'll come through and say, Dolores, we have a message for you. I say, okay, I'm used to it. I always wonder later, what does the client think when they listen to that tape? But they say, we have a message for you. And they said, this is the next piece of information you need for your next book. And they will give me a theory or a concept that I've never heard before. And I say, okay. Then they will return to the session of helping the person. Then maybe a week later, I can be on the other side of the world here in America having another session. It happens again. And it come through again, and they expand upon the theory or the concept they have just given me. And this is how I put it all together like a gigantic puzzle, a piece from this person, a piece from another person, till it all begins to make sense. That's why I'm not working, it's not like channeling, I don't get it through one person. I get pieces and bits, and that's my job to put it together. And this is where the Convoluted Universe series have come from, is all of the complicated concepts they are giving me now. And the information I'm getting now, I could never have handled 30 years ago. I wasn't prepared for it. But they know that. They know what you can handle. They never give you more than you can take, or they never give the client more than they can handle. So they give it to you in bits and pieces, like spoon feeding. So what I was getting 30 years ago was what I could handle at that time. They told me recently through another client, they said, he is where you were 20 years ago. He's not ready for these things yet. He said, you don't give a baby a 3-course meal. You give a baby milk, then cereal, then crushed vegetables. You don't give a baby a steak. So they're not going to dump a whole lot of information on you that you can't handle, or you just throw it away and say, doesn't make any sense. If you do that, then it's not serving any purpose. So they feed it to you in spoonfuls, and they say, digest this part. Then once you get that, then we'll give you another piece of information. And that's the way my work has continued. Because in the beginning, when the concepts began to come through, I was thinking, I don't understand this. And they would help me to digest it and understand it, or I would have stopped right then. I kept saying, you're messing with my belief system. I got it all figured out. And then I got to looking at the thing they had shown me, and I said, if I don't at least look at it and examine it, I'm no better than the church that says, do what we say and don't ask any questions. So as I began to internalize it and try to understand it, then I would be given a little more and a little more. So now it's constant. They're constantly giving me more and more ideas and concepts. You read the Convoluted Universe series, you know what it's doing. It's an evolving thing. More and more information. At the end of Convoluted 3, I made a remark and said, well, now you've told me everything there is to know. There's nothing left to you to tell me. And they said, oh, no, there is more. And that's how we ended the book. And after that, I have more than enough because I've been working on 3 books. And the first one is the new one, The 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth, because I've been lecturing on that. So we said, pull out all the information I have on that and put it into one book. And then there is Convoluted 4, and there are more concepts in that. And there's enough information, I'm trying to figure out where to put it, because I'm always working on more books. And it seems like every time you think you've got it all, there's a little more information. And they told me you will never, as long as you're in the human body, get it all. It's impossible for the human mind to understand it. All of your questions will never be answered because no human alive can handle it. That they said some information is as poison rather than medicine because you wouldn't be able to take it. So when I've had one student at one class one time said, but I want to know it all. They said, it is impossible, but I want it. I said, sorry. They said, it's not the brain, it's the mind. The mind has no concepts to handle what you're going to be given. Now, if you remember in Guy Needler's, see how complicated it was getting. So they think it's time now to begin stretching our minds and giving us a little more information that we can handle. So we're being fed more and more and more. And those of you who are into metaphysics are better able to understand these concepts than what they call the sleepwalkers out there. Ones that are walking in their sleep because they have no idea of what's going on and what it's really all about. But that we at least have a better grasp on these metaphysical things. So I'm going to be going into some things. At first, I didn't want to cover a lot of stuff. I didn't want to go over your heads. But it seems like now is the time to start getting into some of these things. Because when I'm lecturing at an audience, I try to stick with where I think the audience is. But sometimes they get into the questions, they begin to ask more complicated questions, and I said, okay, maybe they can handle some of these things. So anyway, I'm going to try to put some new information into this lecture that's going to be going, it's in the 3 Waves book, and it's also going to be going into Convoluted 4. Okay, now where to start? That's the thing. All right. The first thing to remember, see, some of the other speakers have been touching on some of these things, and I said, I guess it is time to get these things out. We all began with God, and God is a tremendous force. I've had many, many people have sessions where they've gone back to when they were with God, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, just total love, and they don't want to leave. They always describe it as a bright, beautiful light. Sometimes they'll say it's like being in the sun. They call it the great central sun. And when you're there, everybody is together, and they have no desire to leave. It's extremely beautiful and wonderful. And this is why a lot of people say they feel a great separation when they go off. But this is the way it was in the beginning. We were all one with God. Then God wanted to explore. He wanted to was curious. He wanted to experiment. That's when he burst out in all directions. When he did, all of these sparks flew out in all directions. And when I take a person back to what they really, really are, they're just a tiny, tiny spark of light. That's what you all are. You're just in this vehicle right now, what I call a suit of clothes. This is the costume you're wearing right now to play this part in this play. But your real soul is just like a tiny, tiny spark of light. When these tiny sparks of light flew out in all directions, some of them became galaxies, some of them became planets, and many of them were just the individual souls. And God said, "Go forth, my children, and learn. Learn everything there is to learn. Have experiences, learn lessons, learn everything, then return to me with all of your information." That's why they say there is no bad, there is no good. Everything is energy. Everything is experiences and lessons. So when we all have bad things that happen in our lives, that is life. But I always ask the person, what did you learn from that experience? Sometimes they haven't even thought about that. If you've learned one thing, that was the reason for having that experience. If they say, "Well, I didn't learn anything, it was just horrible," well, guess what's going to happen if they say that? They got to do it again. They failed that grade. You have to do it again, and it'll be with the same people, same experiences, even be harder the next time. Because this is just a school, and it's only one of many, many schools you will attend. But when God sends us out, remember, we're on these adventures accumulating everything we can accumulate. We are like cells in the body of God. But when you're having these experiences, they've said before, it's just a play, it's just an illusion. I've had people, when they've gone through the death experience, they look back and they'll say, "It's just a play. I see all the actors on the stage, they're playing their parts. The people are standing in the wings and getting ready to come on stage and play their part. It's just an illusion. But when I was in it, it seemed so real. But now that I'm over here," he said, "it's like a blink of an eye." That's how quick it is. We get caught up in it. That's why you have to learn to figure out, remember, you designed. It's your play. You're the producer, director, actor, and writer of the script. If you don't like the way the script is written, rewrite it. That's how easy it is to do. Once you understand, you really control all of your life. You control the whole situation. It's your play. And when we come in, we have all these other souls who've agreed to play different parts. And they have meetings over there when you're on the spirit side. Whenever you have gone through your life, you've just died, you go through a part where you do a life review. And you look over the life you have just left. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What should I make amends about? And there's nobody up there judging you. You judge yourself. There's no harsher judge than you yourself. You see what you shouldn't have done. And then you see, I hurt this person. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. So you talk to these other souls, and you'll say, "Well, we didn't do such a good job. Let's go back and do it again. This time you be the husband, I'll be the wife. Or you be the mother and I'll be the child." You can switch roles away any way you want because it is just a play. And we make agreements. Okay, this is the part I'm going to play. This time I'm going to be the villain. But you'll learn something from it. And you design what your life is going to be like. And I have had this through thousands of people. I know about the planning sessions. I know when you make the agreements and when you're talking to the other souls. And you'll say, "Okay, I think I'll learn a better lesson if I have this hard thing happen to me this time." And this other soul will say, okay, I'll be the villain. I'll do it to you. Now, on the other side, you may be best friends, but when you come in here, they're playing the villain. And many of them play their parts very, very well, as you all know. But it's an agreement you make before you come in. I'm going to have a hard life this time. But if you look back at it, what did you learn? I have heard stories you wouldn't believe from my clients when they come in, horror stories about the way people were raised that you wouldn't believe. But when I have the session and I ask, why did they have to have such a tarred life? They'll say, they chose it. They set it up. And I said, why? And they said they had to learn to survive. They had to learn how to grow. They had to learn how to forgive. There was always a reason why. And it's very hard. Once they understand that, then they move on. If you don't, you have to repeat it again with the same people. And my clients say, I don't want that. I'm done. I don't want any more of that. I'm out of here. Well, then I said, you better get rid of the karma now. You better forgive them and release it, or you're going to have to come back and do it again. But this is a school you come to learn lessons. The lessons are hard. The hardest part is when you come in, you have your plan. This is what I hope to do. And this is all the contracts I've made with all these people of all the parts they're going to play. Then you come in, you forget it all. The veil comes down, and you can't remember anything. I had one woman going through the birth experience, and she said, I got to remember. And then she's born, and she said, I don't remember anymore. And I asked them one time, wouldn't it be easier if we knew why we were here, if we knew our connections with all of the other people in our lives? They said, no, if you knew, it wouldn't be a test. If you knew the answers, it wouldn't be a test. The ETs have said we are the only planet in the universe that forgets when we come in. The rest of them know their contracts, they know their connection with God. They are very close to Him. We forget because we chose to do that. This is, like my daughter said, the most challenging planet in the universe, the most challenging planet in the solar system. Because to come here, you really wanted to learn a lot. It's very, very difficult. You come to Earth to learn emotions and limitations. So you choose it for that reason. But what I've found is, well, when you're making your plan, see, Earth is not the only school. You have to take all the grades before you graduate and finally go back to God. Earth is not the only school. You have schools on other planets, other dimensions, and many of you have lived lives on other planets and other dimensions. I've had many, many sessions where they have told me about lives in other dimensions. And who knows, after you graduate from this school, maybe you decide, I'm going to go over here and live a life in this other galaxy. Different rules and regulations. So it's an ongoing thing. Earth is just a very, very difficult one. And I've had them, they've come from the source, the God, and they're busy creating planets, they're creating galaxies. Many of you have done the same things. You were co-creators. This is how powerful you are, and you forgot. You can create galaxies. I've had some of them when they created the oceans on the Earth. If you were powerful enough to do that, and now all of a sudden you forget your power, but they're having so much fun doing all of that. Living as a free-floating spirit, creating and having fun like that. Then they're on the spirit side, and they'll say, you know, it's time now for you to go and start an Earth existence. And they'll say, I don't want to do that. This is much easier. I don't want to be stuck in a body. It's dense and it's heavy, it's yucky. I don't want to do that. And they said, well, it's time for you to start your school. And I've had some of them actually cry, I don't want to go. I don't want to go down there. I don't want to do those things. This is much more fun to be up here. But no, it's time. But you agreed to do it because, you know, it's part of your advancement. So, okay, once you sign the contract to start on the Earth School, you have to do it all. And believe me, it's not easy. This means you start with everything, as some of the other speakers were showing you. And I've had all this proven because I have many people go back to these lifetimes. I'm going to say it linearly, we do know everything is simultaneous now, but the only way I can put it into a concept I can understand is think linear. So, in the beginning, you have to be air, part of the atmosphere. All of these are lessons you have to learn before you can move to the next step. I've had people go back to whenever the Earth was in its volcanic stages, before any life was there. The volcanoes were erupting. The air is full of ammonia, and there's no life on Earth yet. They are part of the air. Their job is to help clean the ammonia out of the air. They have to do that before they can move on. And I've had many people do that when there were gases and different things, chemicals even, and even different things that I kept thinking, well, in the beginning, they're talking to me, they got a personality, but they don't have a body, they're just part of the air. In the beginning, it was startling, but now I hear it so much, I'm used to it. But after you do that, then you have to know, what is it like to be the dirt? What's it like to be a rock? I had one man who was a very successful businessman, went to where he was in the dirt. And he said, this is very interesting. I'm looking at all the little bugs and worms crawling around down here, and it's interesting being part of the dirt. And I have had many people be rocks. And they say when they're a rock, they said life is very slow. And see, when I get to the subconscious part, I always ask them, why did you show that life to the person? They'll say, well, they think they don't have freedom now. It's much better now than it was when they were a rock, because then they had to just sit there. Every time we have a session, the subconscious explains the meaning for the person's life. And so I've had them do all of that. Then they have the plant kingdom. You have to do that. You have to know what it's like to be a rose. What is it like to be an ear of corn? What is it like to be all these different plants? I've had people be flowers, and they said, it's beautiful, but it doesn't last very long. So I've had them go through all of these things. In some of my Convoluted Universe books, I have whole sections on people having lives as these different forms of life. And once you understand this, I think you can put ecology and the environment into a whole different way of looking at it. Because we're part of this. We have all been part of it. We need to take care of nature better if we know we're all part of us, different stages of development. So then you have to be animals, you have to be insects. I've had people be worms. I had a real interesting one that's going in Convoluted 4 where the first man went back to a lifetime as an ant. And it was very fascinating to follow the life of an ant. And he had adventures and everything. Then he dies as the ant. He's taken to the other side. He's taken before the board where you do your life review. And I'm thinking, that'd be interesting. What kind of a life review can an ant have? But Dave is saying, you did a good job. You learned about cooperation, about working together as a unit. Those are all very valuable traits. So now you're going to have to go and do another lesson. You learn one, you do good. You don't have to repeat that class. Now you're going to have to learn something else. Maybe patience, maybe love. Who knows what it is? You can't do it all in one lifetime. So it was fascinating to see the little ant as he evolved, and then he had to come back as something else. And I've had him be all kinds of animals, and I always want to know, how does an animal think? How does he see? How does an animal feel? And it's amazing, that's my curiosity, it's amazing how you interpret things. And we're all one. We all have the same ambitions and goals and everything. It doesn't make any difference. It's all life. Everything is alive. But then after you get through being an animal, then an animal is a group soul. And you have to be able to separate from the group soul so you can become a human being. And to do that, you have to give the animal give it an individuality and a personality. This is why they say when you take a pet into your home or you give an animal special attention, love is the answer to everything. You are teaching that animal so he can separate from the group and be able to become a human. You give it a personality and individuality and separates it. The group souls are like herds of cows, colonies of bees, colonies of ants, flocks of birds, they all operate as a group. But you separate from that when you're going to move up the ladder into the human part. So they said everything is alive. They said if there's one thing you could tell people is that everything, this table, this microphone, the floor, the desks, the tables, everything has life. Everything is vibrating at different frequencies, but it is all alive. It all has consciousness. I know a lot of you probably talk to your cars, don't you? You give them names, you give it a personality. They said everything has life. And even down into the fibers of the rug, there are universes within the fibers of the rug. From the microcosm to the macrocosm, everything is alive, and they're all beings. I've had people even go to where there were cells. That's amazing. So we know everything is alive, everything is there. You're all experiencing something. Some of these lives are short, and then you can go on to the next ones much faster. But nothing surprises me anymore. The last client I did before coming here was a big giant bird. And she didn't even know if she believed in reincarnation. She said, I never even thought about past lives, but she was a big giant bird. But not at all what we were expecting. But the subconscious said, it's time for her to spread her wings and fly. She was holding back on what she was supposed to be doing with her life. So every time the subconscious picks a life for the person to see, it's always got a reason. So anyway, when you get into the human, then you have to be everything. Everything. Have to be male and female many, many times. And I have men get upset with me when I say that. What do you mean I've always been a man? What would you learn if you had always been one sex? It's got to be balance. You have to have balance. This is one of the causes of homosexuality. They've been one sex too many times, too many lifetimes, and then the spirit side says, okay, you know, now you got to switch because you got to learn that lesson. I don't want to do that. You know? So they come into the body, and a lot of men will say, I feel like I'm a woman inside of a man's body because they were a woman in many past lives, and now they're a man. You have to learn what it's like. And sometimes the first time they make that switch, it's difficult. And I had one man start crying in the audience, and he said, finally, you give me an explanation I can understand. But this way, if you knew the rules of reincarnation, there is no judgment, there's no prejudice. We're all living our lessons, we're living our path. You never know the path of another person, you never know what their plan is. So you can't judge. But you have to be male and female many, many times. Then you have to be every race in the world, every religion in the world. You have to live on every continent in the world. Can you see if people understand that, there would be no prejudice? If you're prejudiced against anybody, race or religion, guess what's going to happen? Next time you come back, you have to be the very thing that you've been prejudiced about. It's a very orderly system. This is the way karma works. It's all balanced. And I proved this through many, many clients. how it happens. If you start not realizing this, you look at everybody as we're all the same. We're all on the same path, trying to learn our lessons, trying to make the advancement. You don't judge them anymore. If they're negative, they're just using the energy in the wrong way. Maybe next time they'll understand, and they have to come back and do it again anyway. But anyway, then you have to be rich and poor. Sometimes being rich is not a blessing, it's a curse. You have to be everything there is to be. You have to be on every side of every coin to know what everything is like. I had a woman about a week ago, this is going to go in the new book, who, one of her first lives, she was killed in a war as an innocent bystander. And the whole village was wiped out. And whenever she died, she's looking back on it, and she says, I said, well, the main thing I want to know, was she angry? Because when you're angry, you're carrying karma forward. She said, no, I'm looking at those men, and I feel sorry for them. And so there was a whole group that had decided to come in together. Anyway, they're all standing on the other side talking, and they said, now, wasn't that interesting? They've all just been slaughtered. Now, wasn't that an interesting life? You know? What are we going to do next? Well, her next time, when she went before the board, they said, all right, now you've got to understand, we'll have you come back the next time as the warrior. So you can understand what it's like to have to kill, do what somebody tells you to do without being able to get out of it. So she can understand both ways, the victim and the murderer. And it makes perfect sense when they're into that. And this is where I ask lots and lots of questions because I want to understand all of these things. But then you move on to something else. You learn one lesson, then you go on to another lesson and learn that and move on and on and on. Until finally you get to the point where you don't really have a lot you have to keep coming back for. Because I've had them before the board and they said, well, they're showing me 4 lives. I can pick what I want to do next time. And I don't want to be a man. I think I want to be a woman. And I don't know about life as an Eskimo. That might not be much fun. Or living in the jungle, but they said I'm going to have to do them all eventually. Which order do I want to do them in? And they'll pick the one they want to come back as next. And they want to save the hard ones and split it off as long as they could. But are you following me all of this? This is what all of you have gone through. We make the plan. We're going to come into Earth School. This is all part of it. So anyway, you keep doing this until finally, maybe you've learned all your lessons and you can graduate. Then you go back to God. It's a recycling thing. And, see, I lost the thought there. When I lose a thought, it always comes back. But, oh well, it'll come back in a minute. Anyway, the whole program, oh, I hate that when I lose a thought, but it'll come back, okay. So when you graduate then, you'll be going on to something else that may be totally different. And I tell people, once you figure out what it is, you know, in your own life, you repeat the same lessons again and again. I have clients who draw the same kind of a man into their life again and again and again. When are you going to learn that lesson and move on? Because that's the way it works, again and again, the same circumstances, same type of people. And once it means you're failing that grade in school, you have to keep doing it again and again until you get it right. Then you can move on. The next lesson may or may not be better. It may be worse, but at least it'll be different. You get out of that rut. Some people have been in a pattern of making the same mistakes for many, many lifetimes until they finally realize it, and then they can move on. So this is the way you sign up for whenever you come into the Earth School, and you're all in it right now. And they said you can't get out of it until you have finished it. You got to graduate. You can't just say, I'm going to drop out of school, which would be nice sometimes, but you can't do it. So now something is happening in our time right now that is changing all of this. This is the way it has been for eons of time. And too many people are stuck on the wheel of karma. You keep coming back again and again and again. When are you going to get it right? When is it going to sink in? Making the same mistakes again and again and again. We're stuck on the wheel of karma. Well, right now, we are in one of the most important and amazing times in the history of the universe. And things had to change. They had to be different. I don't have enough time to go into the ET part, but I will tell you, they have been with us since the very, very beginning. They are the ones who created life on Earth. The seeding of the planet, we all came from them. And I usually have a little more time, I go into the whole background. I've written many books about this, but they have been taking care of us since the beginning of time. That's why in my UFO research, I've been doing UFO cases for over 25 years. I have never found any negativity because I know why they're coming, I know what their purpose is, and it is positive and beautiful. Because I speak at all the UFO conferences in the world, and the other investigators don't like me because they keep saying, you've not found the truth, you haven't found the horror and the evil. So that's because it does not exist. Because I work in such a deep level, we get away from the emotional that the person is carrying. If they think they've had a bad experience, that's what they're going to get through these lighter levels the other hypnotists use. By going deeper, you go to the real story of what happened, and we're able to get tremendous amounts of information. That's my first book was The Custodians, was my 25 years, and I found, working with us, and I found the answer to every question you could possibly ask about UFOs and ETs. They have been taking care of us since the beginning of time. We are their children. Their job is to watch over us and take care of us. Now because they did create us, and that's what it's all about. I don't have a lot of time to go into, in the new book I'm going to go into more about the UFOs from a different perspective, because it's not, a lot of this stuff is not at all what you think it is. I am constantly finding out more and more information, and it's growing and evolving. But that's why some of these are called the Watchers. Their job has been to watch Earth and take care of it and see where it's going. Now, when life on Earth was created, they said, let's give this beautiful planet a creature with intelligence and free will and see what he does with it. We are the only planet in the universe that has free will. And I've had people go to past lives when they were on other planets and other universes where they didn't have free will. And it was not happy. They were not a good life at all. They could hardly wait to get out of that life. But this one, free will, is very, very important. And they said, let's give them free will and see what they're going to do with it. Then they came up with another directive. This is the Star Trek directive, and it's not fiction, it is real. Okay. We give them free will, they can do anything they want, and we cannot interfere. We cannot interfere with the development of a civilization. We gotta let them do what they're gonna do and just see how they do it. And so along the line, as the species began to develop, they came and gave them the next advancement. This is what Giorgio was talking about last night. Everything he was saying, I've found and I've written about, where they came and lived among the people. Every culture in the world has the legend of the culture bringer. The Indians have the corn woman who brought corn and showed them how to plant. Other civilizations have the legends of the ones that give them fire. They teach them how to hunt. There's always someone who is a culture bringer. Every culture in the world has these legends. And in all of them, the culture bringer always comes from the sky or from across the sea to live among them, to teach them the next advancements. And because they could live as long as they want to, they have conquered disease, they don't die until they're ready to die, they lived among these people for so long that they began being treated as gods, just like Giorgio said, because they didn't understand anything different. And I've had people who were these so-called gods, and they were living among these developing civilizations, and they say, why do they treat us like gods? We're not, we're just beings. This is just our job. So they were doing this. They were giving him the next development that they needed at the time. And then they have to stand back and watch and see what they're going to do with it. And I said, okay, but isn't that interference if you go in and show them how to do these things instead of being the observer? They said, no, we give it to them as a gift one time. What they do with it is free will. Because they said many times they have given a civilization something and they've turned around and used it in the wrong way. And you know, in our time too, they turn around and use it as a weapon. They've done that many times in the past. Now, in the time of the Aztecs and the Mayans, whenever they turned to sacrifice, when they were cutting the hearts out, they said at that time they were teaching them medical practices and how to do surgery. But they didn't understand, and they turned, I think maybe the wise man had died, they didn't know what the reason for it was, and so they turned into cutting the heart out to present it to the gods. And in our time, too, they give us an advancement, and we turn it into a weapon. So I said, okay, couldn't you come back and tell them they're not doing it the way you wanted them to use it? They said, that's interference. We give it to them one time as a gift. What you do with it is free will. And we can just stand back and shake our heads and say, what are these kids up to? But they cannot interfere because that is the rules. So anyway, this is the way it's been down through time. Now they can't live among us because there's too many people. So now when the next advancement is ready to come into our time period, it is put out in the atmosphere as an idea. And whoever gets it is the one who invents it. They don't care who invents it as long as it's in the time period. Because you always hear about people all over the world working on the same invention at the same time. And I've talked to people all over the world who are doing this. There are many that I've spoken to who are working on free energy, and it's definitely going to be real. And I asked them one time, well, should I put these people together? Couldn't they be working together? They all have the same idea. They said, no, that would interfere with it. Let them all work independently. You put them together, it dilutes the power and the energy. Whoever invents it first will be the one to get the credit. It doesn't matter as long as in our time period. So this is how the inventions are coming into our time now, is just by putting it into the atmosphere, and then it is where it's supposed to be. Okay, so they've been doing this forever. They've always taken care of us. Now, the only time they could possibly interfere is if we got to the point we were going to destroy the world. Then they would have to step in and stop us. Because if we did that, they said it would disrupt the entire solar system and even out into the galaxy. And people said, well, what does it matter, a little bitty planet like Earth? And we are a small planet, isolated over here in this part of the solar system. We're isolated on purpose. We are quarantined. They don't want our violence contaminating the rest of the population out there. So we are isolated over here until we get our act together. Then they'd be more than welcome to have us come in with them. But people said, well, what would it matter, a little bitty planet like us, if we did blow ourselves up? They said, everything is in order, everything is planned, and if one planet like this destroyed itself, it would have reverberations throughout the solar system. It would have reverberations all the way through the universe. Also, it would have reverberations into other dimensions. There are dimensions all around us all the time. There are people living in those dimensions. There are cities, there are civilizations. We can't see them because they're vibrating at a different frequency. It's just like when you watch a propeller blade or a fan blade, when it speeds up, it becomes invisible. They're vibrating at a different frequency, but they're there. The ETs know how to go back and forth between these dimensions. And as she was saying in the book Twitters, and I've had many, many cases of that, we constantly go back through dimensions too, and we're not even aware of it. But these dimensions are all around us, and they said if we were to blow this planet up, it would also have reverberations into those dimensions, and it would be like undeclared war on those innocent civilizations. So we cannot destroy this planet. That's the one thing they could step in and stop us. Now, down through the history of the earth, there have been many, many civilizations that have risen to the height of civilizations, much more than we are today. They were highly developed mentally, and they could do things with their minds that we can't even begin to do. Atlantis was one of them, but that was not the only one. There were many, many others before that that went down. Even they reached the height, I have these several stories in my books about this. One of them where they succeeded in blowing a hole in the ozone layer, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? Scientists were experimenting and they went too far and they created a hole in the atmosphere, in the ozone. The heat of the sun came through and burned large places of the earth, and this is where the large deserts in the world came from, because at one time they were very lush, beautiful civilizations, and they said nothing will ever grow there again. That was one time. There have been many, many times when we have destroyed, civilizations have destroyed themselves because of what they were doing. And Atlantis was another one. But many times they have had to come in and step in and stop it because it was getting to the point that they could really harm the earth. And I did get some information. This is in the new book I just published, about 3 waves that I'd never heard before about Atlantis. I thought I knew why it went down, because the scientists misused the power of their mind, they misused the power of the crystals, and to where it did cause a big disruption. Everything is always the men, guys. I'm sorry, but it is always the men. The men always want the power and the greed, and they have a beautiful, wonderful world, and all of a sudden they want more and more and more. And to where I knew they were going against the laws of nature because they were interbreeding animals and humans. And I have a lot of cases of those too in the books. And they said that could not be allowed because they were going against the laws of nature. They kept experimenting with all kinds of weird things. So I thought I knew the reason why Atlantis had to go down, because they were violating the rules of nature and wanting too much and causing disruption. But I had a case just this last year, and I think I put it in the 3 waves, that gave me an explanation I had never heard before of why Atlantis had to go down. And when I asked them, I said, I thought I knew all the reasons. I've never heard this reason before. They said, that's because we have never told you before. We had never told anyone till now. And what it was, they said they were working with dark matter, which I think you can think sounds like antimatter. The scientists, they said, were working with dark matter and doing things they weren't supposed to be doing with it. And scientists always want to learn more and more and more. They don't worry about the consequences. Look at the HARP project, all of those. They don't care about what happens. Look at the atomic bomb. We could have blown up the world when we did that, because we could have ignited all the hydrogen atoms in the air. But the scientists don't care. They just want to experiment. So this case, they said they were working on dark matter, And I said, what were they doing? They said they were trying to create their own universes, their own wormholes. Now, what does that sound like? Those of you who know, you know what's going on right now, don't you? The collider experiments. You heard of those, haven't you? The collider experiments. Okay, I write about it in the book. If you look it up on the internet, you'll see it. It was going on this last year. These scientists were trying to create a wormhole, trying to create a new universe. And they have built this huge machine. They said it is the most powerful machine in the history of the world to shoot atoms and things at each other. And the explosion, they said, they're hoping, create a new universe and create a wormhole. And this is why they're always saying, we want you to know these things because you're repeating the same mistakes now. Well, these scientists that are doing the collider experiment are working with antimatter. And this is what they said they did in Atlantis. They were working with dark matter. And when they were doing it, it got away from them. And it began to destroy the grids of the earth. And they said the grids of the earth, because of this, working with it's hard for me to understand. It has to do with the atoms and all of that in the wrong way. They began to act on each other, and it began to collapse the grids of the earth. So they said we had to step in and destroy it and stop it, because if it would have continued, the entire earth would have collapsed. All the grids collapsed, and it would have had an escalating effect, and the grids of the entire solar system, the grids of the whole universe would eventually all collapsed on itself. This is what they keep saying they're afraid of. So they said we had to step in and destroy the population at that time. And I'd never heard that explanation before. But that was one time. So they said, we don't do it unless it becomes an absolute emergency. And naturally, when that happens, life starts over again from scratch. Because they said it's like blowing a fuse. You can no longer have the powers, the mind powers, the psychic powers you had at that time. You've got to pull the plug. Everybody starts over again as savages, from the ground up all over again, to build a civilization. And now we're at this point where we have finally got a civilization again. Because they said, so much time is wasted when you have to start all over again. Every time they've had to step in and stop the civilization, starts all over again, all over again. They don't like that. And they said, right now, we are getting to this point again. And they don't want to have to start over again. They want us to continue because we have this beautiful, wonderful future ahead of us. So what happened? They been watching the earth, just watch us and see what's going on, shaking their heads and thinking, I don't know what these kids are up to now, but it's, all they can do is say, well, they have free will, let's go ahead and do it. The thing that got their attention was right after World War II. 1945, the end of World War II, when we dropped the first atomic bomb. They said, we better get down there and see what these kids are up to. They're playing around with something they have no idea the power of it. So they came down and they said, we were not supposed to have atomic power yet. We were not ready for it. That when we were supposed to have it, it would be used for positive, for good. And I said, well, we use atomic power for good. We use it for electricity. They said it will never be what it was supposed to be, because when the atomic bomb was invented, it has this aura of death as a weapon and negativity. So it will never be what it was supposed to be. We weren't supposed to have it yet. So they knew if we were playing around with something we didn't understand. They said, these kids can't even take care of their own lives. They're stuck on the wheel of karma. We just came through World War II and all this horrible devastation. They can't handle their own lives. They're never going to be able to handle something this powerful that could destroy the world. What are we going to do? And so, it would be nice if you could just come in and say, stop it. But they're not allowed to do that. That's interference. So what they decided to do, they went back to the councils. There are councils over everything, and they have councils they report to. There are rules and regulations that run everything. Nothing is by chance. They went back to the councils, and they're saying, well, what are we going to do? We can't just go in there and stop them. They came up with a plan that I think is brilliant. They said, we can't interfere from the outside. What about if we influence from the inside? So what they decided to do, the people on earth are too caught up on the wheel of karma, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. We got to bring in souls who are not caught in that, souls who are pure, who have never known violence, who have never been trapped on the wheel of karma. That's what we have to do. So, and I've had this through many, many, many clients. So that's why I put the pieces together to form this whole theory. They said the call went out for volunteers. Earth is in trouble. Who wants to go and help? And they asked for volunteers to come and help Earth. These are pure souls, never been to Earth. They're not contaminated. They've never known karma. Now, these souls came from other places. And I'm seeing it constantly now. The only ones I have now who are going back into typical past lives are the ones who still have karma to repay. Majority of the clients I see now are what I call the first-timers, are the volunteers. Because many, many of them came from the source. They never started on this journey that we're on. They remained with the source. They remained with God. They had no reason to come. And when I'm talking to them, and they said, well, and I know they're in a body. I'm talking to this body that's laying there on the bed. I know they did come. And I said, why did you come? And they all say the same thing. We heard the call. And we wanted to help Earth. So they come in. Imagine what it'd be like with never having any other lives at all, have always been with the pure, the beautiful love, and never experiencing anything, to come into this mess that we call Earth. Because when I've talked to them when they come in, they said, oh my gosh, what was I thinking of? They said, the body is so dense, it's so heavy, and they've been used to being free, and all of a sudden they feel trapped in a body. And I've had them when they're on the spirit side, and they said they were having meetings, and they'll say, who wants to go and help Earth? Earth is in trouble. And one woman said, I stupidly raised my hand. They get down here, and naturally you come in, you forget all these things. Well, another place they've come from is they were ETs. Now, that's what I mean. An ET is just a being. It's wearing a different costume, playing a different part. And many of these were quite happy. They were living on spaceships. They were living on other planets. Many of them had evolved to the point they were light beings living in other dimensions. They didn't have to have any bodies. They were having beautiful, wonderful lives, what they were doing. They had no desire to leave the spaceship. They were living, doing their work. But the same thing, who wants to go and help? And they say, okay, I guess I'll go. And in the 3 waves, I have many, many cases that I've done where they did come from other planets and from other spaceships and things like that. One thing I think is interesting, what I've found, now see, well, when they come into the body, they don't have any karma. They're not on this school. But if they begin to accumulate karma, they're going to be stuck here. So many of them come in with a sheath or a covering over their bodies, their souls, so they will not accumulate karma. because they know once they accumulate karma, they're going to be stuck here and have to come again and again. So they have a protection to keep them from accumulating it, so they can finish their job and go back to what they're doing. The amazing thing is I found many of these people who have come from spaceships, and on spaceships they can live thousands and thousands of years, and some of them, this other part of them, I don't want to get too complicated, but this is only one fragment. You are just a fragment of your whole entire soul. The other fragments, what you would call facets, it says like a diamond with facets, are all living other lives. And you can't know about them because it'd be too confusing. But they send a fragment, a piece of themselves to live a life on Earth. Now, the other being, the other one on the spaceship, is still going about his business there. Other times, they put the body of the space person into like a sarcophagus, a suspended animation to keep it alive until the soul comes back, and then it can finishes the job here, then it can go back and continue its life on the spacecraft. Now, is this making some sense to you? And many of these people have dreams that they're seeing things going on spacecrafts, and they don't know what it is. But they finish their job here, and then they're going to go back because they have no desire to stay in this. They have perfectly beautiful life there. They want to go back to the other planets. They want to go back to what they're doing. This is just like I guess, an assignment like you do when you're in the military. Go over here for a lifetime and help that. So these are all people who have volunteered to come. But Earth is such a very difficult place to live that they come in here and it's very, very hard on them. Now, I get emails and correspondence from all over the world. They always tell me the same thing. I don't want to be here. I don't like it here. I don't belong here. I don't like the violence. I don't like the emotions. I want to go home. I don't know where home is, but I know it's not here. So they're on a very difficult assignment because they don't understand what's happening. So, and now that I've done these radio shows, I do the Coast to Coast, and after we do the Coast to Coast show, I get 3,000 emails a day. And we hear these same things from everybody. And we get emails from all over the world. And they said, I'm so glad you're saying this. I thought I was the only person in the world that felt this way. You don't know what it feels like to know I'm not alone out there. Others are having these same feelings. So I ended up dividing these up into 3 waves. I was doing it according to their age and the characteristics of each one. So the first wave would now be, they were born right after the war, right after the dropping of the bomb. That's when the first ones began to come in. And look what happened at that time. We had the baby boomers. Of course, the baby boomers, I always thought, were because of nature. When you have a war and wipes out so many people, they replenish. But they said the baby boomers were a lot of these new volunteers coming in at that time. So anybody born after 1945 would very likely could be a first waver. But I've had some people tell me, I have these characteristics and I'm in my early 60s. Well, some of them may have been forerunners. Okay, the first wave had it the hardest of all because, we actually didn't want to be here, but they were the first ones to come. Now, they definitely don't like Earth. They don't like the violence. Emotions frighten them, especially anger and fear, strong emotions. They can't handle it. They don't like it. And they always saying, I want to go home. I've had some people tell me, I can remember the little kid, 4 years old, standing in the kitchen telling my mother, I want to go home. And the mother would say, well, you are home. And they said, no, this is not home. But they have... many of them, they have good homes, they got good families, good jobs, but many of them want to kill themselves. And many of them have attempted it because they really don't want to be here. I had one client a few weeks ago who said, tried to kill myself 3 times, it didn't work, so I guess I gotta stay. With suicide, you don't get out of it anyway. So anyway, this is how badly they want to go. The first wave have had it very difficult. So they would be 50s, thereabouts now, 40s, 50s. And I wrote the book Keepers of the Garden. That was the first case I ever had of a first-timer. He came from outer space, and I'd never heard of it before. This one in that book was written in the 80s. Now I have hundreds and hundreds of these, and they're mentioned in many of my other books. Now the second wave, I would think would be 30s. My daughter says don't try to stick too strict on these ages because you really can't. 30s, maybe early 40s, somewhere in there. Maybe down into the 20s. The second wave are what we call antennas, generators, channels of energy. They have come in just with an energy, a loving energy that's supposed to affect everybody else. They don't have to do anything. Many of these people work out of their homes. They don't want to be around people. They're very good people, but they don't have these same characteristics as the other ones did. Now, both the first and second wave, many of them don't want children because they know having children is going to create karma and they don't want to be stuck here. I've had some clients who have managed to have children. It was very, very difficult for them to do it. But they said, well, they wanted to have the experience because their bodies were not made to handle this. But these people are to generate energy. They can walk through a crowded mall or a store. Their energy will affect anybody they come in contact with. That's the way it's supposed to be. They are generating positive energy to help with this uplifting of the world. And but the irony of the second wave is they don't like people. They don't like the energy. They don't like all the junk that's going on out there. So they would much rather stay home and stay isolated and not mix with people. But they're supposed to be doing it. You're supposed to be out being around people anyway. So the second wave, when they come and they'll ask me, what am I supposed to be doing? They always want to know, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? Usually it'll come out, you're not supposed to do anything. You're just supposed to be. And later they'll say, well, I want to be doing something. They said, you are. You're doing it by just being. That's the second wave, are spreading the energy. The third wave, of course, are the children. The ones that Cinnamon were talking about. These are the hope of the world, the new generation that are coming in. Now, the DNA is being changed in everyone. It has to be in order to go into the new earth. The children are coming in with the DNA already in place. We're the ones that have to catch up. And I find that I'm trying to watch the clock because I'm going to try to get a whole bunch in here as quick as I can anyway. But they are coming in to change the world. They are the gift of the world. As at Cinnamon, we were talking about that too. They misunderstood because they're so highly advanced. But our DNA is being changed to catch up with this because it all has to be, as we vibrate differently to go into the new earth. I speak at conferences about the new children. And they had panels of these kids, and that's when I found out how they're thinking. But they had a TV show not too long ago, about a year or so ago, where some of these children, 10 years old, have already graduated from college. Many of them are forming their own organizations. They're just children. They're already forming their own organizations. And guess what the organizations are for? To help the children of the world. They already know their mission. They're doing it. So these are the hope of the world. This is the gift of the world. They said this is the new generation that's coming in. So these are the ones that will lead everybody into the new earth. Now we are moving into the new earth. The earth is a living being. It is going into its next incarnation. It's going to do it regardless. It took it longer to do this, but it is evolving like people do. It's going into its next incarnation. So it doesn't care if we go with it or not. It just as soon we didn't go. We're like fleas on a dog. Look at what we do to the earth. But it is going to go. It's moving into another dimension. The vibrations and the frequencies of this planet are moving into the next dimension. And if we want to go with it, we have to change. We have to evolve. And our vibrations and frequencies also have to change to match it. But this is what we're talking about, the new earth, and separating and going into the new frequency. The first time in the history of the universe that an entire planet has changed its vibration and is moving into another dimension. It has never happened before. And all the ETs, all the beings, everybody are out there watching. They said, this is the greatest show on earth. Are we going to be able to do it? Are we going to be able to pull it off? It started about 2003, and we're at the height of it right now. People keep saying, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? You're in the middle of it now. And those of you who are aware of it know things are changing. You know the vibrations are different. Time is speeding up. You know something is going on. If you're in the middle of this, you know it's happening. Julie, okay, come on up here, because she likes to help me with this part of this anyway, and I'm trying to get all this in. There's a lot to cover. But if we're going to go with it, now there's the old earth and the new earth. It's moving into a whole nother dimension. If we're going to go with it, our vibrations and frequencies also have to change. This means the vibrations and frequencies of our body have to change. And it said they cannot change overnight, because if it did, it would destroy the body. It has to happen gradually. So since 2003, our bodies have been changing. The frequencies and vibrations are speeding up in our own bodies as this moves. I just think of some other things I should have said back then, but you always think of things you should have said after the fact. Okay. You may be noticing changes in your body, and it's getting more frequent now. I think it keeps getting different all the time. But it started in 2003. Now, it'll be subtle at first. There are many symptoms you will experience. You probably have already been experiencing for the last several years. It doesn't all these symptoms don't occur at the same time, but you may have some for a few days, and then they taper off. And then maybe a month or so later, or a week or so, you get another set of symptoms. You go to the doctor doesn't say there's nothing wrong with you. Of course, they're going to put you on a pill anyway. But it's because the frequencies are changing and our body is adjusting to it. And some of the symptoms that I've been told: high blood pressure, heart palpitations. This is a biggie. A lot of people are experiencing the irregular heartbeat. And they keep saying, don't worry about these things, because this is the body adjusting. And we have depression. Depression is a biggie. You'll go through a lot of that. And dizziness. Sometimes you'll go for several days being dizzy. But these things only last a few days, and then they fade. And then maybe a week or so, you'll get another one. Headaches, joint aches and pains. Ringing in the ears is a big one, because that is the energy is being raised. And I have clients coming to me for that, and they'll say, just tell them turn it down. The energy's too strong. And you can visualize a dial. See the dial being turned down, because sometimes they don't realize they're giving you too much. But it has to be gradual, otherwise the body can't handle it. So visualize, tell them it's too much energy, turn it down, and this will help with the ringing in the ears. What are some of the other symptoms? You think those are most of them? It's somebody the other day had one that we hadn't thought of. Probably think of it because somebody said, oh yeah, that sounds very much like it could be. But if you just go with it, go with the flow, don't get too upset and excited, it'll pass as the body adjusts to it. Older people are having more problems adjusting than the younger ones. The younger ones are coming in, they're already set. It's the ones in the middle, their bodies are adjusting to handle all of this. If you can't handle it, you're out of here. You can't adjust, you leave. That's not so bad. They're going to watch from the other side and see what happens. But if the frequencies become too hard, but if you can talk to them and say, let's do it a little easier, calm it down, it's a little hard on the body. Now, you probably notice your diets are changing. Are you noticing your diets are changing? Because in order for us to do this, the body has to become lighter. So you have to get away from heavy meats, especially beef and pork. This holds you down to the earth. You gotta have lighter foods. And through all of my clients, when they always want to know about their diets, it's always the same thing. They tell them the best diet, the best food to eat is live foods. Live foods mean fresh fruits and vegetables. And to stay away from meats, especially beef and pork, with these hormones and the additives they're putting in there, and those are heavy. You can have some fish and chicken, but that's a lighter meat. But really stick with the fresh vegetables, organic if possible, and stay away from too much sugar, and drink lots and lots of water. They said the value of water is beyond belief. You can't believe the importance of water. There's one tiny, tiny thing in the water that we must have. So stay away from the sweet drinks. They got me off of Pepsi a long time ago. It's all I ever used to drink was Pepsi. I listened to them. They got me off of it. I was a Pepsi-holic. But they stopped all of that. Okay. Those are most, they said, you will notice as you move into this, eventually you're not going to want to eat food, you're going to want liquids. And when I've said this on the radio, people will call in and say, I wondered why I wanted to eat more smoothies. We're going to get where it's more liquids. And eventually when it's done and we're over there into the new earth, you won't even want food at all. So that eventually down the road, we won't have to eat. Darn. But that's when you go eventually, at first some people say, do I have to die to go? No, you will go in your physical body. This is a physical thing that is happening to the earth and to us. And in the beginning, you take your physical body. And after, I don't know how long it'll be when we're over there, you will turn into a being of light. You won't need anything. But the new earth is so beautiful and so wonderful. Now the old earth, we're leaving. It's a separating of the two. The old earth is where the negativity is. That's where all of the wars, all of the hurricanes, all of the earthquakes, all these things, the catastrophes are being left with the old earth. Those that are into too much negativity stay with the old earth. They can't change their vibration fast enough to go. It has to be a gradual thing. So they stay with the old earth. They said they've stayed with what they have created because that's their karma. They have to stay with that. Eventually when they die, they will go somewhere where they are still karma to be repaid. They say, don't worry about it. Eventually they're all going to get there anyway. But it's a separating. This is what's in the Bible, in the book of Revelations, when they talk about the new heaven and the new earth. And those, they're taken, those are left behind. This is what they're talking about. But when St. John had the vision on the Isle of Pathos, he didn't realize it was going to be thousands of years before it happened. But, well, we've had a lot of discussion about all of this because, you know, when we get into so many weird things, at least we can talk to each other about this. Because, let me see. I forgot what I was going to say right there. Anyway. Huh? Yeah, it was before that. Anyway, about what it looks like. Well, about the old and the new earth. Oh, because I asked them so many questions about this, and they said, we can't answer all of your questions because we don't know what's going to happen. This has never happened in the history of a planet before. Oh, let me bring about 2012 while I'm thinking about it. Don't worry about 2012, it's just a date. It is not the end of the world, it's none of that. It is just a date. Now, I've had, you know, you remember the Mayans disappeared, and there were some other Indian groups, tribes that disappeared, and nobody knew what happened to them. I've had people go back to those time periods. And what happened was, they developed to as a civilization to the point they didn't need to be on Earth anymore. They moved as a civilization into the new dimension. They changed their vibration and frequencies, and they moved, and as a smaller group. And when I've had people like that, and I said, well, why did you come back? Well, we thought we knew what it was like. We could help the others to get there. I forgot to say that a while ago. The reason the first waivers have had it so hard was because somebody had to be the trailblazer. Somebody had to be the pioneer to set the trail. And some of these people who did evolve and go on, they've come back to help show the way. But anyway, the Mayans did this. They knew, they could see the future far enough to know when the next big event was going to happen, when the entire world would shift into another dimension. They estimated to be around 2012, and that's when they stopped their calendars because they could see this was when this was going to happen. It's not the end of the world. The end of the world as we know it, because it's going to be moving into this beautiful, wonderful new earth. And we are separating. I don't know if you know Annie Kirkwood. She wrote Mary's Message to the World. For a long time, we were doing lectures and panels and things together, and on one of the panels, she was telling everybody about a vision she'd had. And in the vision, she was shown the earth separating. And I'm gonna have to hold this here. I hope you can hear me. She said she saw the earth as a ball. Then she saw the earth begin to pull apart the way a cell does when it begins to separate. And as it began to pull apart, suddenly there were two earths. The one sitting over here, she heard them saying, we did it, we did it, we did it. The one over here, she heard them saying, poor thing, she died believing all that. So the one will not be aware of the others, just like it says in the Bible. Two people sleeping together, one is taken and one is left. Two people working in a field, one is taken and one is left. So they won't even be aware that anything has ever happened between the two. And when I talked about that at one lecture, this one man came up to me afterwards and he said, I want you to know I am a businessman. I'm logical. I don't think this way. And this is the first time anything like this has ever happened. But he said, as you were describing the two earths, Mary's vision, Annie's vision, that the whole auditorium disappeared. I was in outer space and I saw it happening just the way you said. So he went home and replicated it, reproduced it on his computer, And he said, you can use it in your book, just don't tell anybody where it came from. And I think it's in Convoluted 2. It shows the two Earths, one is over the other, just barely. One is shining. That's the new Earth, as we separate from the old Earth. Now, why don't you go ahead and tell them about what you were thinking about the, Pollyanna stuff and all that, okay? Okay.
Okay.
Because they said, nobody knows the answers to these things, but we do the best we can. We're supposed to tell people this is the best we can do. Okay.
What I was shown about how this is happening, and it goes along with what she's saying, that picture was replicated of what that one vision was. And I got a visual one day, and it happened with a very simple choice that I made, and it all comes down to choices. So, but first I want to, yeah, that would be right. Where she's talking about the two Earths. What they showed me is like, okay, these two are superimposed over each other. Because people are saying, they said, well, if this is happening, how does it look? I can still see all these things. These things are happening out there. I must still be, I'm on the old Earth because look at all these horrible things that are going on. And that's, so what, nothing's happening. And if you look at it, see, the two are superimposed over each other right now. That's why you can still see. You're actually in the new Earth now, okay? Just stay with that.
They keep saying, when is it going to happen? You're already happening.
There. You're already there. It's just that sitting here with the old Earth and superimposed over the other one, so you can still see what's going on the old Earth, all right? Now, and when you see those things, you have to ask yourself, because you're saying that's what's happening. It's in the world. It's
on the news.
But is it really happening to you? Is it really in your world? Okay? That's the distinction. Is it really your world? Now, it can be. You can make it your world. You can get emotionally involved in it. You can watch the news and get all caught up in that and make it your world. And what you just did is you jumped from here to here when you did that. Okay? It's so easy right now to jump from one world to the other because they're sitting on top of each other. Now, as you make choices, and that's a huge part of this, is the choices. As you make choices of what you want to think, what you want to do, didn't you hear? That sounds familiar, doesn't it? What you want, that moves you to this one. And every time you make a choice, you move, okay? And they start moving this way. And that's how they start separating. Another visual I was given was, it's like if you just take what I just showed you and let's turn it sideways. And you have over here what represents, it was showing it as red, deep red to me. And it was like all the intense emotions, heavy, intense,
negativity.
Well, just emotions. It's just heavy. Okay, and it was going to over here, which what I can only assume would be the new Earth, was light and breezy, and it was like this light blue, and it was just ease and joy and peace, like that. Okay, and it was all these places in between. So it's not just a bam bam. It's and every time you make a choice, you're see what's happening here? Okay, and you make a choice to move in this direction. Oh, that feels good. Oh, I like that. Oh, that's nice, because you're moving in this direction. You make another choice, and it might move you back this way. It's like, ooh. Oh, I get caught in the drama. Oh, it's whatever. It's like, oh, that doesn't feel so good. Oh, okay, let's make choices in this direction. So gradually you start making choices. It's all about your choices, and you're just moving. And see, what's happening is you start moving away from that. That was where these two, move away from each other. That's how it happens. Now, the first time, like I was saying, what she was saying, the Pollyanna, when they first showed me, it was something simple I had made a choice on. And I said, well, I can do it this way or this way. And they said, yeah, there you go. That's the new Earth and the old Earth. I'm like, well, that's too simple. That is too simple. I said, because that's still happening, you know, it's still over here. I can see it. And they said, yeah, if you want it to be. If you want that to be your world. And I was like, well, that's Pollyanna. It's on the news. It's on the news. It's real. If you want it to be. That's how simple this is. It's your choice whether that's what you want to be your world. It's your thoughts that create your world. So
you create your own reality.
Exactly.
Everything in your life you put there.
Yes. So you are the one that chooses which world and how your world will look and where you will be by your choices.
And people are always saying, oh, are we just going to go bam when we're there? No, you're in it now. It's so gradual and subtle that you just suddenly they'll begin saying, you know, things feel better. They look different. Things are going better. You know you're moving, and it's gradual like that. So it won't be sudden. That's why they said 2012 is just the culmination of the energy is building up to only a year from now, that the energy will push us into the next dimension. But it's very gradual. You'll feel it in your bodies. You'll know something is happening. That's the main thing. Oh, yeah, I forgot about it. I don't think there's going to be time for questions, but I have I forgot all about them. I have some pictures I want to show you of something that has never been seen before. And I'm going to go in the new book, and I thought, well, I can present them tonight. I had a client come to see me, and she said she'd taken these pictures, and she'd held on to them for several years. She didn't know what to do with them. And she said, I want you to have them because I think maybe you'll use them in some way. I sat on them for many years because I didn't understand what it was either. But when I had the woman there, we had a session. She wanted to know what were these pictures. And the subconscious explained everything. And this is part of the energy that's happening now with the moving us into the new earth. And it's been around for a long time now. But when what do we do, is lay it on here, or we don't? I thought we had to move something. Okay, I'm used to transparency. Her and her daughter both came to see me. They were outside one night. There's a big bright star in the sky. And people think UFO. So she got her camera and she began taking pictures of this bright star. But when they developed the film, something totally different is on the camera. Okay, let's see. There's a whole series of them, and you will see that it moves and changes, it morphs. Now, can you see it? Okay. Turn them upside down and we can. Are you able to see these? Okay. They didn't see any of this until they had the film developed. Julie, when she first saw these, she said it was doing something to her just looking at them. Are you feeling anything? They're supposed to affect you. That's why they said I'm supposed to show them. If you're feeling anything in your body. I think that's a good one. Of course, I put them in the book. It's going to have to be black and white. The colors are different. And they didn't see it moving at all. All they saw was this bright light like a star. Can you make it out? Is it clear enough you can see? Okay. Okay. Julie said when she saw him, it did something to inside of her. She could feel something, so I don't know if you could feel it or not. Okay, and I just made some notes here. This is going in the next book about when I had the session with them and I wanted to know what this was. They said this is the higher forces that are working with the planet, the ones that are trying to keep it in balance, working with the energy grids on both sides of the dimensions, this side and the other side. I said, in the picture it looks almost like a physical object. They said it's an entity. It's elastic. It can spread over a lot of territory by expanding. And it's working on balancing the planet with the energy work. And this even goes all the way down into the center of the planet, and it's enveloping the whole planet like they said, it's like it's elastic, an embryonic sac as it goes all over the world and is balancing the earth. And I said, well, when they first saw it in the sky, it looked like a star. They said camouflage. I said, it didn't show up until the pictures were enlarged. Then it seemed to change shape. And they thought it was a physical object of some kind. The human eye and the human physical body is not on that vibrational level to be able to see it with the naked eye. Sensitive people can feel its presence, but they can't see behind the camouflage, but the camera picks it up. That was why they were able to get pictures of it. And I said, well, why were they allowed to photograph it? And they said, because other people need to see it, and now is the time, and we're moving along on schedule. But this was 2006 when I had the session. And I said, it appears to change shape in the pictures. Yes, it changes size and shape depending on what it's doing. It accommodates itself to the environment it's working in, or the dimension that it is working in, the energy makeup of the dimension. It is a light being. It is an entity. It has elasticity. It's ever moving, constantly moving, with pieces coming off of it that rotate around it and intermesh, and they go all the way down to the center of the earth. And I said, well, what does it normally look like? Or is it just the way the camera picked it up? It wouldn't look normally like that on this side. They mean their side. But through your atmosphere and your dimension, that's what it looks like here, if the camera were to pick it up. It would look different in another star system. Things are affected by their environment. Well, where it comes from, what does it really look like? It's a huge, huge vapor of light. It is so big you can't comprehend it. It's actually much further away than you think it is when you're taking these pictures. And it's photographed as smaller because it is so huge and it's much further away, and it's appearing as a light in the sky, but actually it's from a long, long way away. And it's moving, and it's huge, huge thing. Anyway, it's here to help the earth. It's the one that's helping change the energy and the frequency of the earth as we go into this. So there's a lot of help out there, and that's what they said in here too. Don't ever think you're alone, because this is an example. There are always beings here helping you all the time. But it says this is affecting the DNA also of everything. And I think you said when you first saw it, it was almost like you felt it, your DNA.
I remember now, I kept looking at, so I was feeling this vibrations and everything, and I said, I don't know what this is, but it's important. That's all I could feel, is this is really, really important.
Because it said the image that's in the sky works on the outside into the center of the earth. It affects everything, the people, the animals, the plants, anything in the vicinity. Your DNA is also being affected because DNA is energy encoded into physical matter. This is light work, and it's part of the plan of the planet as it grows and develops and moves into the new earth, the new dimension. This is not the first time this thing in the sky has performed this type of work. This is what it does, and it comes when it's needed. So it says you need to know these things. Anyway, I've had some people send me pictures of UFOs. They think it's UFOs, like that scribble parts. And they said it was a UFO. They picked it up when they took the pictures. So anyway, I said, most people think of UFOs, and they were emphatic. No, this is not a UFO. It's higher than the angelic realms. Physicists will understand it one way. Scientists will have other explanations, but others will feel it at a soul level. So I've been holding on to those pictures since 2006, yeah. And I thought, well, maybe now I understand enough about the New Earth. Maybe we can talk about it, and I can put it in a book and maybe understand it. But isn't it amazing? They said the human body and the human eye can't see it because of the frequency and vibration it is vibrating at. We see it as a star, as a light. The camera picks it up in a different way. But the woman, she gave it to me and she said, I think maybe you're the one that can do something with it. She didn't want to just give it to anybody. So this is the first time I've ever shown the pictures and talked about them. So I'm hoping, can you understand a little bit about it, or is it too deep? You understand? Okay, so you're the first ones to know about this anyway. So we are advancing and we're moving. This is a very amazing time you're living in right now. Wonderful, wonderful things are happening. And for you to move, there are things you have to do. If you want to go with the new earth, first you got to get rid of karma. Remember I said karma holds you with the old earth. You have to come back and repeat. You got to get rid of the karma. The first thing to do with that is to forgive. Don't hold on to anything anymore. It doesn't matter. What if you had a terrible childhood? What if you had parents that abused you? Let it go. What if you had a bad marriage? Let it go. It's no longer important. Holding on to it, you create karma that holds you, and you have to turn back and come back again and again and again. Release it, let it go. It's not worth it. And I tell people the way to release it. You can't do it face to face, forgiving people. Sometimes it's too difficult. Some people say, you don't know what they did to me, I can't forgive them. But sometimes you can't say it face to face, and sometimes the person you're still holding on to and angry at has died. So what you do is you do it mentally. Picture that person in your mind, whether they're alive or dead. Picture that person in your mind, and you say, remember you made contracts when I said earlier when you come in here, they're playing their part? So when you picture them in your mind and you say, we tried, we really tried, it's not working. Let's tear up the contract. And see yourself tearing up the contract and throwing it away. You can do that. It's not easy, but this is what you have to do. Then mentally say to the person, I forgive you, I release you, I let you go. You go your way with love, I go my way. We don't have to be connected anymore at all. And you got to mean it. It's not easy, but it'll work. When you do that, they no longer have any hold on you. They can't push your buttons. You know, it's a game. A lot of people like to push your buttons, and they know what to say and what to do to set you off. Once you do that, you release them and let them go. They can't push your buttons anymore. They may try, but it's not going to work because it's not important to you anymore. You want to come back and do it again with those same people? That's the law if you don't release them and let them go. This is the number one thing you've got to do if you want to move to the new earth. Let all of the karma go. Forgive these people, and then try not to make any more karma. The second thing you've got to do if you're going to go, get rid of fear. Fear holds you to the old earth. You saw our t-shirts, didn't you? Fear is an illusion. Fear is for entertainment purposes only. They say fear is not real. The only thing that is real is love. Fear holds you. It makes you afraid. As they said, don't buy into the stuff you hear on the news. Don't buy into all this stuff that are people trying to make you afraid. They get you scared of these imaginary diseases they come up with. Afraid of, oh, we're in this economic crisis, the world is coming down. And we don't even listen to that stuff. People email us and say, well, what about the economic crisis? They say, what economic crisis? That's not our world. So don't buy into all this fear. You create your own reality. Everything in your life you have put there, you can have that world because that's what you want in your world. You create your reality. You want that other world, okay. You want to buy into the fear. Another thing I forgot too, when you're forgiving everybody and let it go, another thing you got to do, you got to forgive yourself. That's not easy. Remember, it takes two. You've always had a part in all of this, and you're part in the play that you're presenting. So you forgive yourself. And it has to be done because there's no place in the new world for any of this. That's why they keep saying we're no longer accumulating karma anymore. But you've still got this stuff you've got to get rid of. There's no place for karma in the new world. So does this make sense to you? If you want to go and it's going to be beautiful and wonderful, or do you want to stay with this other earth that's destroying itself? It's up to you. If you want to go, forgive, let go of karma, and then let go of fear. And we're in for a beautiful, wonderful experience. And that's where we're all headed. And I'm out of time, and I have no time for questions. So I hope I gave you a lot of information anyway. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. It's embarrassing. Okay, thank you so much. Now, I'm not going to do any signings now because we're going to go into the movie. We'll do signings after everything is over. What we're going to do is maybe take
maybe a 10-minute break, just
5
a
or
quick
10
potty
minutes,
break.
bathroom break, and then come right back.
Right back in.
We're going to do the movie, and the producer is here, and he's going to play a little game with you before we show the movie.
You have such a treat ahead of you, so please come back quickly.
Come back quickly so we can get started into it. Okay, just a bathroom break and get back here. Okay.
In 2010, there were three of those.
That just came straight.
The pictures you showed?
Whoa.
I lived
Whoa, I'm
in
feeling
Norfolk,
that. Whoa.
20 miles from Tampa, and I watched them every night for 3 months.
That
There were
looks like
three
that?
up in the skies.
Because they said all they saw, I'm going to get these so I won't lose them, all they saw was a star.
Yeah, no, I'm a trained artist. And get out my binoculars and watch them change. They were luminescent.
Well, maybe the binoculars can pick it up then.
And, you know, it's like, you gave me one.
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask him when he wants to do.
Yeah, because he said he wants to do He did say he would like to have the sound turned down.
Better out.
Okay.
Okay. We'll make sure it's loud.
How do you want them to start out? Like, do you want a chair or what do you want to do?
No, we're gonna do the podium. I'm gonna stand at podium. Yeah.
He said this is better sound than two of these.
Okay.
Okay, and I told him you want the sound, he said turn
Way up.
way up. Let them with it.
So down here or
No, we'll put it on. It's been a little over, but I completely forgot about it.
Well, you know what it has to. It's such beautiful information. I don't know how I'm gonna follow that.
I was trying to think what I got to talk about, and a lot of it I was forgetting some.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you'll. Okay.
He's going to use that other one. This is the Arkansas premiere of this movie. He's doing it all over the United States. Up here then. Yeah, it's on now. Okay, you come on up in there. I think you're about, looks like most of you have wandered back in because we didn't want to have too long of a break so we can go ahead with this. Okay, let's get on up here. And you're going to use the podium mic. Okay. Okay. This will be yours. Okay. What you're going to see tonight is a real treat. This is the Arkansas premiere of this movie. Now, I do so much filming that I don't remember what I do. And a lot of it's popping up on YouTube. It pops up various places, so I forget what I've done. And it was in April or March, I think, when you first contacted me. And you said, I've made this movie, and you're in it. Can you come to Hollywood for the premiere? I was thinking, okay, I guess so. I didn't remember anything about it. And so when I said, well, it so happens I'm going to be out there anyway doing a class. So it all worked out fine. I stayed a few more days for the premiere. And Michael Perlin is the director, producer, writer of this movie. And it's called 3 Magic Words. And I do remember when we were doing the shooting, we kept saying, what are the 3 magic words? He said, no, it's a secret. Nobody's going to know until it's all put together and the movie comes out. So you're in the dark too. People have been asking me, what are the 3 magic words? You'll find out tonight when you watch the movie. But when I was in Hollywood in April, I was working with a lot of different actresses. And believe me, no matter how much money you got, how famous you are, they all got the same problems that you got, you know? And we were talking about the movies in Hollywood, and one of them said, nobody cares about metaphysical movies. It's all, you know, the car chases and the crime and all that stuff. That's all they care about. And I said, I think you're wrong. And they said, no, we know the powers that be, the ones that got the money that are making the movies, that's all they care about. Anyway, we had the premiere in this big movie theater in Hollywood down on Sunset Boulevard. And that theater held over 400 people. Well, we get ready to do the premiere, and that theater was packed. They had they had people waiting in the lobby trying to get in. They brought some in and moved them down the front, and they sat in the aisle. It was packed. So when it was over, and I got on the stage and we were doing the panel, and I told them that story. They said nobody cares about metaphysical movies, and it was a standing ovation when it was done. And I told them, we have proved them wrong tonight. Look at this theater, it's full. And there is an interest in metaphysical movies. And I think he's done a beautiful, wonderful job. And it surprised me. I didn't know I was in it as much. He didn't tell me. He said he wasn't going to teach. The only thing he said is you have the last words in the film.
Last 3 words.
So we were sitting there watching it, and I kept thinking, that sounds like my voice. So anyway, that was a surprise to me anyway. But anyway, I'm going to let him talk about how you came to do this. This has not been easy, but I think he's going to do remember What the Bleep? How that started? It was an individually produced film. They took it out and started doing premieres, and it was a sellout. And he kept it up, and finally picked it up. The distributor picked it up and became world famous. And the same with The Secret. This is going to do the same thing. But let's let Michael tell you his road, because this has not been easy for him. You got to believe in what you're doing. You got to trust, and it'll come true. His dream has come true. Michael Perlin. Okay.
Well, thank you, Dolores. Don't you love her? So, what are you doing here in the middle of Northwest Arkansas in this dark room? It's like beautiful outside. What are you doing here? I know why you're here. It's the same reason I'm here. And I'm here because I know that there's a huge shift happening right now on the planet. I feel the shift. I started feeling it a long time ago. And I decided that I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to be here and help speed it up. And if you're here today right now, you're here for the same reason. You're here to speed up that shift. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I made this movie. That's part of it. But I studied metaphysics for 20 years, and I was looking for a common theme that all the books were saying, like all the masters, all the great philosophers and spiritual teachers in the world, in history, have been telling us, because I just saw the world not getting it, and I couldn't figure out why. We have all these books out there, but they're not getting it. Are they not reading? So I decided to look for a common theme, something so simple that the rest of the world can understand, just something that at the average IQ would understand. So that's when I found a book on the shelf by U.S. Anderson. It's an old book. It's called 3 Magic Words, and the number 3 is spelled out. And I found it in there. And that's when I knew I had to make a movie. So the movie is inspired by the book, 3 Magic Words by U.S. Anderson. And when I began writing metaphysical material, I decided to call myself a metaphysical filmmaker. So what is a metaphysical filmmaker? Most of you probably have your own idea of what that is. Well, metaphysics is the study of the nature of reality and the existence of God. The study of the nature of reality and the existence of God. And that's God calling. I'll talk to you in a second, God. So I decided to, metaphysics was my favorite subject, and I couldn't figure out why they didn't teach us this in school. So since it is my favorite subject, we're going to do this like a class today. And it's going to be Metaphysics 101. Welcome to my class. It's an easy A, because all you have to do is watch the movie. And after the movie, you'll be ready for the advanced class, God 101. So since it is a class, we're going to take a pop quiz, then we're going to show the movie, then we're going to have a final exam, and then we'll have questions. So you will need a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper. If you don't have one, please share. If you have someone and someone doesn't have one, please share it with somebody else. Don't worry, it's an easy quiz. I know we don't like school, but we are in the Earth School, so here we are. Raise your hand if you do not have one yet. Okay. Can somebody share a pen or a pencil with them? And it's real, after you're done writing your answer on your piece of paper, you can just share your pen with someone who doesn't have one. Great. Okay, you ready? I'm going to ask you a question. The first question, there's going to be 2 questions in this pop quiz. The first question, who are you? The first thing that comes to you, just write it down. Now that's the easy question. Raise your hand if you're not done. Okay, great. Ready for the second question? Who are you minus your name, what you do, and where you're from? I'll say it again. Who are you minus your name, what you do, and where you're from? That's a little harder one. Raise your hand if you're not done. Okay. All right. Now hold on to that piece of paper. That's your movie ticket. And I present you 3 magic words.